What is that one thing you did as a child that still gets brought up to this day? When I was really little, I was running around in a family friend's yard. I was still potty training and had the pull down your pants part of going to the bathroom down pat, but hadn't quite mastered the find a toilet part. So I just dropped my pants and poop on the grass. The best part is they were taking a video at the time, so now they have a home movie of me taking a crap in their yard. It's been 25 years and everyone still makes fun of me for it. When I was 7, my neighbor had a heart attack. I felt like I could have helped prevent it because I had saw a commercial advertising Bayer aspirin and how it kept your heart healthy or something. I thought the doctors didn't know about this miracle drug. From that day on, I wrote down every medicine commercial with a brief description of what the medicine did. One day at dinner, my brother was complaining his hands were dry and itchy. I ran to get my notepad and told him he should try Vagisil. When I was about 4, my parents were talking about Bill Gates or someone else super rich, and I said very insightfully, I bet he can eat at Waffle House anytime he wants to. I think it stemmed from me constantly begging to go to Waffle House and my mom always saying, we don't have the money to eat at Waffle House every day. I just assumed money was the only reason I couldn't eat there every day. My family never ate out when I was young. Once my parents said we were going to a restaurant, and since this was such a luxury for us, I assumed it was a special occasion that warranted dressing up. I was maybe 4, young enough that I had plenty of fancy dresses to play dress up. The restaurant was a McDonald's. When I was a wee lad, my family and I were at a restaurant. We were waiting an unusually long amount of time for a server. I stood on my chair, slammed my fist into the table and exclaimed, they're not helping us 'cause we're black. We are not. When I was around 3-4, I used to try to seat people at restaurants. I also made my parents let me stand by the doors to the mall, with them right next to me, so I could welcome people to the mall. My mom brings it up whenever she can. Destined for great service. My aunt's dog died when I was a toddler, and to commemorate said dog I drew her a picture that was just scribbling with a red crayon, and told her that my picture was called Blood and Bones because that's what her dog had become. I'm in my 30s and my aunt still bring it up and thinks it's hilarious. Every time my 5-year-old niece's great-grandmothers come up in conversation, she mentions death. Your great-grandma C used to have chickens, yes, but then she died. Your great-grandma K arrived in Texas safely. She is going to die. She says it seriously and calmly. When I was 4, I guess I was having a real bad morning. I came out of my parents' room after I had woken up and went out to the living room, where I sat down in my personal toddler-sized chair and stared straight ahead at the TV, not saying a word to my then stay-at-home dad, who was already up watching TV after my mom had gone to work. He changed the channel to SpongeBob just for me. He then proceeded to tell me good morning, to which I replied frick off. To this day he still has no idea how I heard that, though he assumes he heard my mom say it to him during an argument they were having. He tells that story to anyone he gets the chance to tell. This story made me laugh so much. I needed this today. When going on long car journeys, we would often have to use hillside routes and the like. Rural Ireland. When going over a steep hill at speed, it always gave a funny feeling in my stomach. As a child I proceeded to shout with utmost determination, Dad, my willy is scared. They tell everyone this story. Having grown up in Ireland and knowing those roads well, my youngest brother always used to say my ding-a-ling is tickling, ha ha ha. I have to. When I was a kid I couldn't say frog. I said frick. I was also a very clumsy child. I was running, tripped, hit the corner of a table and gave myself a black eye. My family thought it was hilarious for me to tell people mommy did it. I come from an incredibly classy family. So, my parents had a nanny suite in our old house. They decided to let a family friend who was retired live in there and be our nanny rent free. They also paid her a few $100s every 2 weeks. She was a pensioner. So, I was about 4 and she used to bring me out on her adventures. What my parents didn't know was that she was a secret lush. She used to bring me to a bar midday. The bar flies found me entertaining. They would buy me ice cream if I sang How Much Is the Dog in the Window. As a 4-year-old I found this perfectly acceptable. I got to sing and free ice cream. My parents never knew because nothing bad ever happened to me. After we sold the house and I was about 8, we walked by the bar and I go, "That's where I used to sing for ice cream." My parents asked what I meant and I told them. They were horrified at first and asked me if anything bad ever happened and I said no. I'm 35 and still haven't lived it down. Purposefully hid in the mall at closing time because I wasn't ready to leave yet. Then nobody got to leave because the mall was on lockdown. I was 3. My grandparents were flying back in from overseas but their flight got delayed. I was about 6 at the time and a massive The Lion King fan. I decided to provide some entertainment for my family, so I got up on these half walls that were in the center of the airport and just started singing at the top of my lungs. I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts with some pretty elaborate dance moves, including golden spirit fingers. My parents couldn't stop laughing, and neither could everyone else in the airport. Haven't lived it down. Just be thankful there's no video proof. I accidentally hit my little sister in the head with a hatchet. I was like 6 and helping my dad in the garden. Little sister jumped out to surprise me. Oops. 12 stitches later, we were cool. My brother once hit himself in the balls with a hatchet. Funny crap. When I was around 5 or 6, I asked my mom if she'd still love me if I were a squirrel. She obviously said yes, but this upset me apparently because I was in hysterics for the next 20 minutes screaming but bears eat squirrels. It's something my mom loves to tell weird or strange relatives at parties. That, and the time I broke my sister's nose with a plastic Barbie Pegasus toy. Excuse me, bears eat beets. I had just watched Tarzan as a kid. We were walking through a construction kind of zone. This was the mid-90s, and I jumped up and grabbed what looked like a power line and proceeded to do the Tarzan yell. My father assumed I was being electrocuted and tackled me off the line. I then got my butt beat for being stupid. UP and the resident bullies Jordans in 6th grade and everybody applauds you only to find out his parents are going through a heated divorce. I see him at the bar every now and then while he brings up the fact I gave his shoes a golden shower to everybody with no backstory as to why I did it. Frick this dude. My younger sister, we were watching some Discovery Channel documentary on marine life. Anyway, at one point, she turned to my mom and said, "Did you see that?" Mom's like, "Number." What sister says on TV? The animal. Their mom asks which animal. My little sister says you know, and then whispers, "The octocucci." My sister was afraid to say octopus because she knew puss was a bad word. We still talk about it to this day, to the point that I have since moved across the country and my husband and my friends all refer to an octopus as a you know, an octocucci. Oh lord, priceless. My little brother would say hectocopter for the same reason. So I don't know if anyone has ever been to the Bugaboo Creek, but essentially it's a restaurant with a bunch of talking animals on the walls. As a kid I went there on my birthday cause I loved animals and crap. But what they don't advertise is that for birthdays they bring out this big butt moose puppet on one of the waiter's arms and want you to kiss the moose. But 7-year-old me did not want anything to do with this puppet and I instantly shut down into tears yelling, "I don't wanna kiss the moose." Nearly 20 years later I am still haunted by the memory as my family constantly reminds me of my most infamous whine. I don't wanna kiss the moose. That's a completely reasonable reaction. I was about 3 years old, in my mom's arms in the checkout line of the grocery store. There was a lady with darker colored skin in front of us, and in my ignorance I tell my mom that lady is dirty and needs a bath. My mom was mortified, and so am I every time she reminds of the time I was a mildly racist toddler. When I was 3, I think, my dad brought me to a travel agency to plan a trip to Disney World. Apparently, the travel agent was this nice older lady, and she asked me if she could come with me. I said no, and pointed to, as my father described her, this drop-dead gorgeous woman 2 cubes over and said, "But she can. It has been told to everyone, always. Dad takes you to Disney, you take care of dad. I hope my kid has my back, too." When I was around 6 or 7 I lived in a pretty large neighborhood which was frequented by an ice cream truck. So whenever I heard, "Pop goes the weasel," I would run to my dad and beg him to buy me some ice cream. One day I was just about to get dressed when I heard that sweet jingle. I was scared I wouldn't make it in time, so instead of putting on my clothes or telling my parents, I grabbed my piggy bank and raced outside naked. I was in the middle of climbing our fence when my dad pulled me off and apologized to the ice cream man. I can't remember his face, but I'm sure it was epic. Anyways, my dad still brings it up 10 plus years later. Not epic. This is absolutely hilarious. I am trying to imagine the ice cream man's face. Had to write a story about something that happened to our family in the 4th grade. Decided to write about the time dad felt an earthquake while he was on the toilet. It ended with, dad still did a poo but instead of hard it was runny. Gets brought up at least once a year. I sat down on the ground while walking on usual route home and wailed, why must we always go this way? Young me had it right. Variety is the spice of life. You get meningitis at 13 months but fully recover with no side effects, and your mom won't shut up about it for the next 36 years about lucky and blessed you were. I totally get why that's annoying as frick, but I'm sure that was the most harrowing experience of her life and she probably counts herself thrice as lucky as you tbh. I can't imagine watching something you love so much get sick like that. When I was maybe 6 or 7 or so, learning fairly basic math at school, I casually asked my mom what year she and my dad were born. She replied with, we were born in 1965, honey. I sat there for, like, ages, thinking about this and what it meant, and after a while, I asked mom, did you mean 1965 or 1865? It was a difference of probably 10 years in my mind, but they cracked up, made me count to figure out the answer, and they still bring it up to this day at any number of dinner parties or gatherings. Cheers, mom. This stuff really opens my eyes to what good parents are like. If I had said that, I would have been met with a barrage of insults and questions of my intelligence. This thread has honestly been so wholesome. My cousin and I were in 4th grade together, specifically the same class. Well, I had gotten angry at him for something, God knows what, neither of us remember, which led me to announce to him that our cousinship was over. I still have no idea where that came from and I've never heard the end of it. Cousinship ended with Mudasik. Now Salman is my best cousin. Embarrassing story time. Around 7 or so, noticed that when I got an erection I could make it move, bounce up and down. So oblivious to the fact not something to share. Sitting next to my mom on the couch I said, Mom, look what I can do. She looks at me like I'm what? I point down to my crotch and there it is moving up and down. She bursts out laughing and just tells me that stuff keep to yourself, honey. Still brings it up time to time. I used to be so embarrassed, now I see SN laugh about it. Oh, I have two for you. TL. DR. At the end : picture it. Small town restaurant circa 1995. My very pregnant mother was craving seafood. This particular place had a seafood buffet. So, she, my father, and myself go out for the evening. Everything is going well. We're enjoying our meal. I'm excited over being able to have a soda with my meal because soda is a special treat. Suddenly, my stomach is killing me. I'm in some serious pain, but I do not want to ruin the evening, so I stay quiet. Do you remember the old vinyl booths? Well, turns out that they have a really good reverberation when a little, tiny, petite 7-year-old girl lets out a man-sized fart. Everyone turns to look. My face is red. I panicked. I looked up at my poor, innocent, unsuspecting birth giver and gasp mother. Her face goes white. The whole place just heard me fart and heard me pin it on her. Who would believe her if she denied it? She's obviously quite pregnant, and these things happen, right? Cue my father, practically choking from trying to refrain from laughing. His eyes are bulging and watering. His face is contorted and red. He had to excuse himself to the lobby. He could be heard laughing the entire way. She brought us up every chance she got. I totally deserved it after making her take the blame, lol. A few years later, quite the tomboy I was. I loved running around outside, getting into trouble. One day, I'm playing and end up trying to mimic a scene from AFV to see if I can succeed where the kid in the video failed. Spoiler alert, I could not. I fell. I felt my arm snap, just a bit above my elbow. I walk inside, calm as can be, and tell my mother my arm hurts. I can't lift it. She takes me to the emergency room and sure enough, it's broken. They wheel me back from X-ray into a room. There's a doctor, a nurse, and a really nice lady in a pretty dress, but my mother is nowhere to be found. They asked me how my injury happened. Oh, this is a test. Since I wouldn't tell my mom what happened, she must have sent this lady to find out. And seeing how I was doing something she had told me many times not to do, I'd better not tell her. I fell, and that's all I'm saying. They brought me a popsicle. They told me my mother could come in and see me soon. But how did it happen? I'm not telling you. I fell. You see, the particular location of the break was not a common break point for falls. It was more common a spot broken from grabbing a child by the arm, if you catch my drift. So, that's the time I got CPS called on my mom because I was afraid of getting grounded for doing something I shouldn't have been doing. TLDR. 7-year-old me blames a frat boy style fart on my mother. Then a few years later accidentally gets CPS called on her because I wouldn't tell the doctor how I broke my arm because I thought I would get in trouble for doing something she warned me not to do. While I was potty training, I would make up stories about my pee and poo about how they're a part of a royal family and they have a race on who's coming out first. To this freaking day, it gets brought up. Well, I'm invested in the characters now. It was book week at my school and I decided to dress up as the Tin Man, which meant literally wrapping myself in tinfoil. It was all fun and games until the school day started and I realized I couldn't sit, otherwise it would rip. I attempted to stand for the whole day. A few hours in, I fainted and had the school staff calling the ambulance. I was like 10. To this day I am constantly reminded of it. When I was like 10, I asked my little sister to hold my taco up because I needed to put some sauce on it, and because it was round at the bottom it would just fall over. My family refuses to buy anything other than the flat bottom shells now. I'm 25 and my parents bought me dinosaur shaped taco holders for Christmas this year. I honestly think that is sort of sweet XD. I ran away from high school because I got into a fight with one of my friends. I ran the whopping distance of 50 meters and hid behind a tree for a few hours. Police and fire brigade were searching for me. This still gets brought up to me. I once told my mom I was running away. I was 6. I went and got a little suitcase and put my toys and a dress in it. I came to the front and my mom had my coat out. She zips it up and says she would miss me. I said I wouldn't. So, out in the front yard I went and my mom waved goodbye. I sat under a tree. She called from the front that she made me lunch. I was hungry so I went home. At my parents' wedding, I was like 4 years old. I put my head in the backrest of a chair. It had horizontal struts and my head barely fit between them. Once I realized that I was stuck, I started panicking and the whole wedding had to be paused to get me out of that dang chair. I threw up bright pink Ribena, bitter and diluting juice, at my uncle's wedding, walking behind them down the aisle, because they hadn't much of a clue what to feed a 3-year-old and filled me up with snacks and juice. And I was hyper and running around cause sugar rush. Oops. My dad told me that when I was at his house one night, I apparently half asleep started to scratch the wall. When asked to stop, I replied, but it itches. It gets brought up all the time. My grandma always talked about the time I told her God lives in a box. I was referring to the tabernacle where the Eucharist is kept in church. She thought it was adorable. Everyone else likes to focus on the time I painted a whole room with my own crap. Elaborate on the second story, please. When I was 3 or 4, I was waiting in line at the grocery store with my mom. I was bugging her to get me a candy bar and she kept saying no. So naturally, my response was to bite her on the butt cheek. Apparently, the guy in line behind us thought it was hilarious and starting laughing out loud. I was the 9th caller and won a backstage pass to meet Michael Jackson on the Bad Tour, but the concert didn't end until midnight and I had a big test on Huck Finn the next morning in middle school, so I passed up the chance because I needed my pre-test sleep. Now everyone makes fun of me for passing up the chance to meet a legend, also I could get some shut-eye before a meaningless test. Ruined my parents' wedding in the eyes of the minister lady. I was 3 or 4 when they married. I'm likely autistic and I have very, very bad ADD. My parents only married because they wanted to make sure my dad would get custody if something ever happened to my mom. They wanted it to be a pretty chill wedding. Short and quick. Sadly my mom is officially Catholic and so got married in a church, and some church lady no one knew wanted to make a big deal out of it, so she wanted to give a long butt speech about God or something. My parents asked her not to, but she wouldn't have it. Little did this lady realize that long butt speeches don't go well with hyperactive 4-year-olds with big imaginations. So she's speeching. I'm bored out of my goddamn mind on my mom's lap. We're like 15 minutes in, which is a lifetime in a kid's mind. She pauses for a millisecond to take a swig of water, and I yell out, "Boo, we're done now. It's over. This sucks." She was incredibly offended. My parents thought it was hilarious. She kept going with her speech, apparently shooting death glares. But I'm a kid, and I'm bored, and I was promised a short ceremony, so I interrupted her again by climbing up on the table, scrambling around on all fours and roaring loudly like a lion. My parents loved it. She did not. God, I want to do this in meetings at work now. When I was about 5, I was at the post office with my mom. I noticed a fire alarm on the wall, probably for the first time. For some reason it was very low to the ground, like eye level with me, a 5-year-old. No clue why. I asked my mom what it was and she kinda blew me off and gave me a quick answer, which I completely understand now because I have a 4-year-old and answer thousands of questions every day. Well, her answer did not suffice, so I took it into my own hands to find out exactly what it did. I pulled it and everyone started looking around and kinda heading for the exit. Then they saw me standing there terrified. Everyone got quite a laugh out of it and I even got to see fire trucks come. Fast forward 25 years. Now I work for the postal service and actually used to work in that very building. Told the story many times. The alarm is still very low to the floor. When I was about 3, I had apparently crap in my underwear. So in order to avoid getting in trouble, I hid the evidence. I did this by going into my older sister's room and basically waffle stomping it into the floor register. My sister was away on a trip for a week, so nobody really went into her room. That was until my mom had some laundry of hers to put away. That's when she found it. For 3 or 4 days, whenever the heat would kick on, it would blast crap fumes throughout the house. My dad scoped the air ducts with a camera, thinking he'd find a dead mouse or something. Nope. It was a turd stuck in a vent, with a toddler-sized footprint in it, plus a smear on the carpet next to it where I wiped my foot off mayo. I'm 26 and that's still a regularly told story. My parents are divorced now, so I get it double because both sides still tell the story. That's my legacy. At first I thought by evidence you meant the soiled underwear. The rest of the story proved it was much worse than that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.